Ross Chastain has recently come under fire from his rivals for his aggressive driving style. After the race at the Richmond Raceway, there was some heated situation between Cristopher Bell and Ross Chastain. Bell blatantly called Chastain the wrecking ball, while Chastain has made some surprising statements about Bell. Also, before this, Chastain issued some warning to Kyle Busch. So what's going on with Trackhouse Racing's #1 driver and the other team's drivers? Join us as we delve into the dramatic world of racing on NASCAR Zone. But before we dive into that, do subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. The latest controversy to arise from the NASCAR Cup Series took place during the previous weekend and centered on Ross Chastain. Due to the fact that he drives so aggressively on the track, the driver for Trackhouse Racing is often always in the center of some sort of controversy. At Richmond Raceway, another collision that he was involved in was blamed on him. The event occurred during the closing stages of the Toyota Owners 400 race that was being held at the Virginia track. With only a few laps remaining, the top 5 drivers were spotted vying for position against one another. There were several vehicles up front, including the #1 car driven by Chastain, the #20 car driven by Bell, and the #24 car driven by William Byron. Cristopher Bell was observed attempting to advance up the racetrack when he was running in the middle lane, just as Chastain was driving into the bottom lane of the track. The next maneuver resulted in the driver of the #20 Toyota Camry TRD colliding with the rear of the vehicle driven by William Byron. It threw him off his game, which eliminated any possibility of him winning the race. In an interview after the race, Bell talked more about what happened and said,
The wrecking ball came in and made us 3 wide at the last second. There wasn't enough room to be 3 wide. No, he didn't do anything wrong, but that's just his MO. So, I feel bad for the 24 because he obviously probably didn't get the memo that we were going to be 3 wide, because I barely got the memo that we were 3 wide, and that's just the way it always is.
William Byron was a casualty as a result of a collision on the track involving several other drivers. On the other hand, Hendrick Motorsports teammate Kyle Larson went on to record his first victory of the 2023 Cup Series season. In response to Cristopher Bell's nicknaming him the Wrecking Ball, Ross Chastain gives his opinion on the matter. Following the conclusion of the Toyota Owners 400 that took place at Richmond Raceway on the previous Sunday, Ross Chastain responded to some comments that he had received from Cristopher Bell of Joe Gibbs Racing. He said,
He can say what he wants. Like other guys, he walks right by me. He doesn't say anything to me. So I don't think I touched anybody, and I'm down there on my line.
Following the conclusion of the race, Cristopher Bell issued a tweet in which he expressed his regret to William Byron. He was aware of the amount of space that was available to him on his left. On the other hand, Ross Chastain was not mentioned anywhere in the tweet at all. What are your thoughts on this heated-up situation between Cristopher Bell and Ross Chastain? Tell us in the comments. Be sure to hit the bell button and subscribe to our channel to get the latest updates. So is Ross Chastain a fan of Joe Gibbs Racing drivers? There appears to be a pattern developing here, as the driver for Trackhouse Racing has been involved in accidents with 2 drivers for JGR. In addition to this, he got into a fight with Busch, a former star driver for JGR, during one of his races. All that is left is for him to get into trouble with Martin Truex Jr. and Ty Gibbs to complete the full set. And where exactly does Kyle Busch fit into all of this? Back at the Circuit of the Americas, when Busch made a joke about Chastain's glasses, Chastain did not take them lying down. When it comes to Ross Chastain, everything you ask Kyle Busch about is going to result in a strong reaction from the driver of the #8 Chevrolet. At Richmond Raceway, this should be a certain technique for a reporter to fill the notebook with so much information that the upcoming narrative almost writes itself. Busch, Chastain, and Ty Dillon were all going for a 3 wide coming off a turn at Richmond in August of last year, when Chastain came up the track slightly and pushed Busch as Dillon raced by cleanly on the inside. The wheel was spun by Busch, who then collected Eric Jones and Martin Truex Jr. Although it is true that Chastain deviated from his racing line, it appeared as though he was attempting to avoid contact with Dillon on the inside of the track. there was space for Busch to climb the track, but there was probably not enough time for him to react. As a result, it was only the latest in a string of mishaps that had been troubling the #1 Chevy all throughout the season. In response, Busch came up with a slogan that has been used on occasion since then. Kyle Busch talks about making up with a teammate after the Suarez-Chastain incident at COTA last week.
In the Ross and Danielle situation coming, is it any different on how you mend fences with teammates than non-teammates?
I think that has to do more with the team owner. When I had an issue with Jeff Gordon a long time ago, Rick brought us in and sat us down and we talked. And then myself and Denny, once or twice, once for sure, the All-Star race, but then after that it was a couple speedway racing incidents that we had where we just had to agree to disagree on our philosophies around speedway racing, and obviously he's won a hell of a lot more than I have at those, so he's better at that. But that was where Joe had to get involved and kind of talk us through our differences. But I think that's kind of where it lies, in my opinion. When I've had drivers at KBM that don't get along or whatever, I talk to them individually, and then I bring them together and I talk to them together and try to go over that stuff. So last week looking at it, the Suarez incident, just the replay that I saw, I didn't go back and watch, but Chastain dove it in like anybody would and ran into the back of a guy who ran into the back of Suarez, so it wasn't maliciously intent to, the one to hit the 99. It just happened that way through chain reaction. But still, again, you got to be, maybe I hit somebody with my front end when I got into the corner, but I think you can do a pretty good job of knowing where your stuff's at. Maybe he needs glasses. I don't know. I started wearing them this year. I see way better.
There was very little in there that should have been seen as a direct hit against Chastain. Nevertheless, when Pockrass sought comment from Chastain, he neglected to precede the question by informing out that Busch claimed, based on his own personal experience, that glasses are helpful. The only background Chastain had was that a fellow driver appeared to be criticizing him, and it didn't help that the reporter was giggling as he posed his question.
Kyle Busch said you might need glasses, talking about how drivers need to know where their car is on the track. So I get a reaction on how is your eyesight? I mean, is it fine? And what do you think when another driver says something like that?
I would recommend he come mention that to me personally. He doesn't need to. He can say it wherever he wants, but he never says anything to me, so I wouldn't know it.
Chastain did an excellent job. Because he had not heard Busch's exact comments, he maintained his position without becoming more aggressive. If he had exploded, the reporter would have gotten the story he claimed to want, and it would have been inaccurate. Nevertheless, he chose not to. After reading Pockrass's tweets about the interview, racing enthusiasts started commenting with their criticisms of him. We can only hope that Busch was able to track down Chastain and reassure him that this should not have been an issue at all. Now we have come to the end of today's video. Talking about the next race NASCAR will broadcast live from Bristol Motor Speedway next weekend for the Food City Dirt Race. This is the second event of the short track swing in 2023. So that is for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Tell us in the comments what you think about the video. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see more of our videos on NASCAR updates. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.